Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tomiko Brown-Nagin, Dean of the Harvard Radcliffe Institute, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Kim and Judy Davis Dean's Lecture in the Sciences, this year featuring the path-breaking space engineer, MiMi Aung. Before I introduce our speaker, I do want to take a moment to thank Kim and Judy Davis, whose support makes this lecture series possible. And I'm very glad that Kim Davis is here in the audience. Welcome, Kim, and thank you as ever. I'm also pleased to welcome MiMi's sister, Momo Aung. Thank you for joining us. And finally, we have a number of colleagues here today from MIT and from the Harvard and Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. Welcome. I'm glad you could be with us. Finally, let me acknowledge the members of the Radcliffe Institute Leadership Society and all our annual donors. Your generosity keeps Radcliffe programming free and open to the public, and we thank you. On February 18th, 2021, NASA's Perseverance rover landed on Mars. It had traveled for almost 7 months across nearly 300 million miles to the red planet's Jezero crater, where scientists believe a lake and a river delta existed billions of years ago. The rover, roughly the size of a car and weighing over 2,000 pounds, has an ambitious mission to collect samples of Martian soil and rock and to look for evidence of ancient life on Mars. But that's not all. Perseverance also carried a highly sophisticated passenger with a mission of its own, a 4-pound helicopter designed to test whether powered, controlled flight on Mars is possible. This is no simple matter, as you can imagine. Before it could take flight, the helicopter, aptly named Ingenuity, would need to survive Mars' notoriously inhospitable environment, where dust storms engulf the planet and nighttime temperatures in the Jezero crater can drop to minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Then Ingenuity would need to take off and stay afloat in Mars' incredibly thin atmosphere, which requires its blades to rotate some 6 times faster than a helicopter on Earth. And of course, it would need to land again on the planet's rocky surface. Perhaps most remarkably, it would have to do all of this autonomously. Communication between Earth and Mars takes far too long for engineers to control Ingenuity in real time. Leading up to its first test flight, NASA described this project to the press as high risk, high reward. In other words, success was far from certain. But the bet paid off on April 19, 2021, when Ingenuity achieved the first ever powered control flight on another planet. This has been described as a Wright brothers moment, but Ingenuity's flight wasn't just a technological feat. It also opened new pathways to discovery. In the 2 years since Ingenuity's historic first flight, it has taken to the sky some 50 times. Looking to the future, advanced helicopters that navigate treacherous terrain and provide aerial views might unlock powerful new means of exploration on Mars and beyond. Indeed, NASA is set to launch another rotorcraft in 2027 called Dragonfly, destined for Saturn's largest moon. This remarkable achievement and all it promises for the future is the result of years of hard work, creativity, and innovation by the Ingenuity team, led by today's distinguished guest, MiMi Aung. As project manager, MiMi led the Ingenuity program from its earliest development through its first historic flight. This work was a culmination of more than 3 decades of service as NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where MiMi's work spanned spacecraft guidance, navigation and control, autonomous systems, multiple spacecraft formation flying, and deep space signal processing and communications. In 2021, MiMi joined Amazon's Project Kuiper, which aims to harness the capabilities of low Earth orbit satellites to provide reliable and affordable broadband internet access to underserved communities across the globe. In recognition of her path-breaking work, MiMi was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people of 2021, and in 2022, she was elected to the National Academy of Engineering. This afternoon, MiMi will share her personal journey as a space engineer, from her start in NASA's Deep Space Network to Ingenuity and her current role at Project Kuiper. Following her remarks, MiMi will be joined in conversation by Amy Villeneuve. Amy is a tech executive, board director, and advisor to technology startups. Among many other senior roles, Amy was president and chief operating officer of Kiva Systems, which under her leadership was acquired by Amazon and became Amazon Robotics. I'm delighted to have MiMi and Amy here with us today, and after their conversation, we'll turn to audience questions. Whether you're joining us in person or online, you can submit questions at any time using the Slido link that is provided on the screen behind me and posted in the chat feature of the Zoom webinar. And now please join me, anticipating myself, in warmly welcoming MiMi Aung to the stage.
Well, thank you for the introduction, and I'm excited and honored to be here at Harvard Radcliffe Institute today. Thank you for inviting me. I hope to share with you the story of a girl who traveled across the globe, literally, and took a journey into space exploration and STEM, share with you the incredible projects and experience that she can't believe she's been a part of. And her journey's still continuing. And spoiler alert, that girl is me, all grown up. So I'd like to start with one of those incredible events along the journey.
Earlier today, Ingenuity should have autonomously performed its first flight attempt on Mars. Now the team is ready to receive the data that will tell them whether we've made history.
This is downlink. We are beginning to see data products.
Rotor motors appear healthy. All actuators appear healthy.
Internet is reporting having performed spin-up, takeoff, climb, hover, descent, landing, touchdown, and spin down. Altimeter data confirms that Ingenuity has performed its first flight of a powered aircraft to another planet.
We can now say that human beings have flown a rotorcraft on another planet. Let's get back to work and more flights. Congratulations. That was an incredible evening. Just one thing, I don't know why no one told me my hair was sticking out that night. So that's, starting from the beginning, I was born at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, while my parents were foreign students doing their PhDs there from Myanmar. In fact, my mother was the first woman from her country to get a PhD in mathematics from an American university. So, yeah. And when they finished their PhD, they went back to their home country. They took me back. I was about 2 years old there. So I grew up in Burma. That was my formative years. I grew up in the culture. My education was set there. My love for school and my love for mathematics all started in the Burmese education system. And in fact, I still do my multiplication tables in Burmese today. So when I was about 11 years old, we moved to Malaysia. And there, I was sent to British international schools there. And there I got to meet friends from countries around the world, many cultures, many languages. And I love seeing the world. I really love seeing the world, so to speak. And through all those changes and moves, one thing that I found stability was continued education. I continued to love school, continued to build my education, continued to love math. And back in those days, just like a lot of people who can see the stars, I was fascinated with space, the question of, is there life elsewhere? Are we alone? But I was living in countries that don't have space programs, so I really didn't dream that I would ever have an opportunity to be a part of space exploration. I continued to do well in school, and when I turned 16, my parents decided to send me back to the US to continue further education. So I was the only one in the family that could come back to the US at that time because I was a US-born citizen. So they put me on a plane to live with their best man from their wedding, Walt, and his wife. This was 1983. There was no internet, no digital cameras. I didn't know what Walt and Ann looked like at that time, but they told me they were going to pick me up in the US. So there's a picture of my family seeing me off, the one suitcase. My sister is there with me, and a big question mark on the right side on what future holds. Well, I arrived in Blue Mound, Illinois, to my parents then, time is money, there is no time to waste, so they sent me straight into senior year. So I was a senior high schooler in a new country, staying with my parents' friends, really grateful to them. And new culture, new school, new accents. By the way, when I went into that school, I had a very strong British accent, which disappeared within days. I quickly assimilated, and I had a fantastic high school year. And I graduated, and at 17 years old, I was back at University of Illinois, where I was born, this time as a freshman. I wanted to major in math. My parents said no. They insisted that I majored in degree with application, so I picked engineering. Well, they worried that engineering is a male-dominated field, glass ceiling, et cetera, and that part I decided to not listen to, and I pursued my heart and pursued electrical engineering, and I fell in love with signal processing communications, which had a lot of math. Then I graduated, got my bachelor's and master's degree from Illinois in electrical engineering, and then started looking for a job. At that time, one of the professors mentioned to me about a place called NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, out in California. He said, they run the Deep Space Network, that tracks really weak signals coming back from deep space satellites. They use these low noise amplifiers and, to amplify the signals. You should think about it. And voila, right there, that old dream of deep space exploration. I all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, I'm in a position to pursue this job. I have a chance. And I wholeheartedly went after getting an interview. And I got the interview. So I flew over to Pasadena, California, and I remember driving down Oak Grove Drive like yesterday. And I couldn't believe I was driving into JPL. And as you can imagine, I was insanely excited about talking to everybody there, and there were so many things that I realized, I could do this, I could do that, for all the education that I had racked up. It was just realization, and happy to report, I did get a job offer, and I started working there, and that was 1990, I walked in. And at JPL, I did one project after another, different projects, different line management. Next thing I knew, I'd been there for 30 years. So I kind of meant it when I say, follow your heart. And every day, just a dream come true. So my life at JPL was about getting scientific answers from deep space missions that are operating at large distances from Earth, right? So imagine, like, to get a sense of how far, right? You send a signal from Earth, it takes 4 to 20 minutes or so to reach Mars, depending on the distance between Earth and Mars at that time. Go further out. You send a signal to Saturn. The signal you send right now will get there about 80 minutes later. So my world became, and I was really engrossed in the world of missions that are autonomous, that are complex, and always first of a kind. So, first place I started, Deep Space Network, just like the professor said, and to get a sense, right, that out at Saturn, right, the spacecraft out at Saturn, they're transmitting a signal that's out of a 20-watt transmitter. You think about your 100-watt light bulb at home. I mean, a fraction of that, that's the transmitted power traveling over all those distances, 1 over r squared loss, and how tiny the signals are, and all kinds of corruption. And DSN collects them by these large, using these large antennas. This is the largest one, the 70-meter diameter, right? 3/4 of the size of a football field. And they receive them, and then back in the back, really do amplify them with these very low noise amplifiers that are adding a few degrees Kelvin while amplifying it to the levels that we can process. And then there, as a signal processor, to me it was a signal processor dream, just processing the signals to recover. And again, I couldn't believe I had arrived. I was a part of JPL, like somebody who could understand all these algorithms and able to contribute by understanding the system, and just loved that. By the way, factoid, this large antenna, back in those days, I did have a chance to walk across that dish. It's an incredible experience I'll never forget. Another factoid, I ended up marrying the expert in low noise amplifier at JPL. Another experience that's not forgettable. And it's true, I'm telling the truth. So, and then after about 8-9 years in the Deep Space Network, I moved from the ground side of deep space exploration to the space side. And there I spent many years working on, and I really got drawn to realizing the state of, what we were doing, great missions. But there was so much room to make these spacecraft so much more autonomous, really increase the capability of these spacecraft out there. And I became obsessed, passionate about it, and spent a long time in the field of advancing autonomous capability. And then around 2012-13 came the concept of the Mars helicopter. I became the lead for it in 2014 until it flew, as the dean described, until the first flights. Getting ahead of myself there. I'm glad the dean reminded all of you about the fact that it's extremely challenging to fly a helicopter at Mars. I truly worry, because Ingenuity has been flying for the last 2 years beyond our wildest dream of success, that you might start to think it's really easy to fly a helicopter at Mars. Please, trust me, it's not. And for the reason the dean, I'm going to repeat a little bit, but it really is. The atmospheric density is very thin there. So it's 1% of density compared to the room, right? We're enjoying the density in here. So for a rotorcraft to generate lift, I mean, that's the first, challenge. And the very low temperatures of dry ice, the vehicle has to survive in there, and it's just this sheer distance that the helicopter has to fly in. So really, a helicopter, at the time, this is 2012, circa 2012, whether it is feasible to fly this helicopter was fundamentally questioned, even by some of the very senior engineers, that are experienced. And it's just counterintuitive, right? Because it meant that this helicopter, for the 1.2 meter diameter, it had to be less than 1.8 kilograms, less than 4 pounds, and in that 4 pounds have to be kept, to be packed, like the ability to generate lift. That's like spinning 2,700 RPMs, right? Really fast, to be able to charge itself, to keep itself warm, to fly autonomously, to communicate, all of it under 4 pounds, and it really was challenged. the question was challenged, but of course there were others that were like, let's go for it. We have simulations, we have algorithms that show it's possible, and so like all things ambiguous and uncertain, we take one step at a time. Simulations, analysis show we can do it, and so we started with building a 1/3 scale vehicle and taking it to a chamber. This chamber is at JPL, a large chamber that we put in, pumped out air, and then backfill with carbon dioxide to represent Mars-like atmospheric density, and then demonstrated that we can generate lift. That was 2014. So after that, the next step was to build a proof of concept helicopter and show that we can fly a helicopter in that density in a controlled manner. This, I remember the day, is May 31st, 2016. And in fact, in a sense, is quite historical. Because until then, nobody had flown a rotorcraft in a controlled manner, right, in this thin of an atmospheric density. And so after that, the question was no longer whether it is possible to fly a helicopter in Mars. The question became, what can we, build it now, small enough and light enough? So this was a really important day, and our team came through in 2017, built the engineering model that was 1.8, is 1.78 kilograms we came in, and that contained all that it needed, the solar panels, the power, self-standing vehicle. We did it. We took that helicopter back to the same chamber, and this time is flying autonomously on its own, out of its own battery. And after this flight, NASA authorized us to build a copy to then send to Mars. And that's the Ingenuity that you all know. This is my favorite picture of the whole project. It's a picture of Ingenuity taken some hours before we were packing it to send out to Florida to be packed, to be integrated onto the rover. The next one is my second favorite picture. It's a picture of Ingenuity now integrated on the Perseverance rover. You see on the underbelly. And it's my second favorite picture because for our team, after over 7 years of teamwork, really hard work, we made it. We made it to the rover. Like, we caught the bus and we were going to Mars. I mean, it's really incredible, the meaning that this picture carries. And the bus launch took us onto Mars. And then the next picture really floors me. This is a picture of Ingenuity taken from Perseverance rover after the rover delivered Ingenuity to the surface. And you can see the track as the rover was driving away, and there is a little 4-pounder standing tall on its own, ready to start its own life. And this one, I know you saw it in the first video, but the price comes with having to listen to me talk. You have to watch this video again. It's my favorite flight. I do have a third flight in the backup charts, which is my second favorite flight. And as the dean mentioned, this really was a Wright brothers moment. I mean, that day, the Americans flew the first rotorcraft flight on another planet. And just imagine, like, we are flying a rotorcraft around a planet, in the atmosphere of another planet today. Ingenuity held a surprise for us that day. And I think you've seen this picture, but it's an extraordinarily important picture for me personally because it shocked all of us. We knew that Ingenuity was going to take a picture of the terrain underneath, but we didn't know how well it was going to be poised and, how the sun was going to be perfectly angled, and just look at the perfect picture of its shadow. And since then, Ingenuity went on to take other color pictures, first ever picture of a rover taken from an aerial dimension, and it's been successfully flying for the last 2 years now. April 19th was just last week, 2-year anniversary. And the big thing is, due to its success, NASA baselined 2 Mars helicopters to be added to the Mars Sample Return campaign, and now there are 2 more Mars helicopters being built to be launched as a part of the Mars Sample return campaign. So our team really got the opportunity to add aerial dimension to space exploration. So after Ingenuity, what mission do I pursue next? I thought about this very carefully, and I know I wanted to keep doing projects that are complex, ambitious, and that have really big impact. And after spending a whole career on systems that, for space exploration in deep space, I decided to apply that experience to impactful applications on Earth. And that's how I landed at Amazon Project Kuiper. So Project Kuiper is an initiative to extend affordable, high-quality internet to unserved and underserved regions across the globe. And this project is very meaningful for me, having grown up across the globe, being in different cultures and having had different levels of access to educational materials that I always craved. I fundamentally believe, in having affordable, high-quality internet access across the globe. And there are hundreds of millions of households without broadband. Even in the US, tens of millions of people don't have reliable high bandwidth connection. So Project Kuiper is working to bridge the digital divide. And what is the system? The Kuiper system is a constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit. And being in low Earth orbit and working with high-tech antennas, the Kuiper will be able to provide high bandwidth, high capacity, low latency internet service. But Kuiper is so much more than just satellites. It's a system. It's a system of satellites in orbit, thousands of satellites in LEO orbit, hundreds of ground gateway connected to tens of millions of customers. And we can serve customers in residential, in small businesses, large enterprises, government organizations. And the customers connect to the satellite through antennas that we call the customer terminals. The antennas, the customer terminals connect to the satellite, and on the back end we have gateways that are connected to the internet, to the networking, private networking, and private clouds. And so with this system, the exciting part, next page, is these customer terminals, right? It's exciting because these are what we would have in our homes. We would install in our homes or take it if you need mobility, portability, and they are built using the phased array antennas. And phased array antennas are traditionally very expensive. And so Amazon, from upfront, determined that for Kuiper to be viable, to serve as many customers as possible across the world, that these customer terminals have to be affordable. And fortunately, Amazon has the extensive experience of making personal devices that are affordable and simple. And so we have infused the Amazon experience in customer electronics industry and infusing it and crossing it over to customer terminals for the aerospace application. So with that crossover, you're seeing on the left here the smallest of the customer terminals, and it's about 7-inch square, able to deliver speeds up to 100 megabits per second. What you see on the lower right is the standard customer terminals for residential applications, and able to deliver speeds up to 400 megabits per second. And what's more, we're able to produce it under $400. So with that, this is again a huge space system engineering. And so with the priority to make the customer terminal simple and affordable, we made the ground site as simple as possible, and then design our satellites to be more capable, more powerful. And to launch our satellites in the large numbers that we do for the constellation that we're building up, Amazon has procured 77 heavy lift rocket launches from 3 launch providers, the Ariane Space, Blue Origins, and United Launch Alliance, and that was the biggest single largest commercial procurement in the launch industry. So you can see how I was drawn to this Project Kuiper. I mean, the mission that it's going to serve, the rockets, the thousands of satellites, the ground systems, the networking. And it's being done like in no other program that I've been on before. You know, the programs I've been on before, it would take decades. And we're doing this on a commercial timeline. And on top of it, with private industry, in this case, Amazon, with this, the scale of commitment, like $10 billion invested, $10 billion, right? $10 billion invested to establish the fundamentals of this system. We had celebrated a huge milestone. Just last month, we shipped, this is in there, our 2 first prototype satellites. They've been launched to Florida for integration with the launch system to be launched shortly as to operate our protoflight mission. And in our protoflight mission, we will test the communications, the networking design that we're using in the final design, as well as check out the launch and the mission management procedures. So this is the first time that Amazon will be putting satellites in space. I mean, in space business, there's always risk, but we're expecting to learn as much as possible from this protoflight mission. And our prototype satellites, the 2 satellites, will be launched on board ULA's first Vulcan launch that's coming up in a few months. So in parallel to the protoflight mission, we're also working on the production satellites that we start, for the constellation, for the actual constellation that we start launching next year. So with the licensing agreement with the FCC, right, the Federal Communications Committee, with the FCC, we'll have half of the constellation by July of 2026, and we're on track to doing that. So going back to me, going from the aerospace industry, this is the aerospace industry crossover, to the private industry, pursuing with the fast, exhilarating. It's been an incredible ride. And I really believe that more of these crossovers will be occurring as space is becoming increasingly accessible. So with that, we are definitely living in exciting times. So wrapping up this presentation, reflecting from when I was 16 to now, with that big question mark on the right, I believe that I've been following the following equation that I want to share in my journey. And being an engineer with love for math, the solution involves a Venn diagram. And I really believe that it's important to pursue the intersection of what you're good at and what you like to do and what you really believe is needed. And when you find that intersection, and that intersection doesn't come that often, I mean, it's rare, hang on to it and really pursue it. Don't let people talk you out of it so easily. More importantly, don't let yourself talk out of it. And to really pursue that, there is no way around hard work, like, I don't know how to describe it, like really, really, really hard work. There is no easy mission, I think, anywhere. And critical thinking, really thinking, for yourself, the team, like really thinking hard. And I really believe that with that combination, we can really, take dreams towards reality. And so with that, the sky is not the limit. Thank you.
So honored to be on this stage with this remarkable individual. I've seen that video so many times at this point, and I still get chills.
I do too, except for the hair. I wish my hair wasn't sticking out in that video.
And I have to admit, I mean, the energy that you bring to this, and I've known MiMi, I've had the pleasure of knowing MiMi for a number of years at this point, And this is the kind of energy that she brings to everything she does. It's just infectious and amazing, and it makes you believe that all of these things can happen super easily, because that wasn't hard, right? The helicopter, like, you know, from this, we saw the videos, it looked like it all just happened, and it all just happened perfectly, right? There were never any bumps along the way, right? I mean, what are the memorable moments? What are the challenges that you faced, you know, throughout these?
Sure, yeah. First is, of course, the question of, you know, are we really going to pursue this? Is this really possible? Actually, there is a video that I like to share. This is the 1/3 scale video that you watch. There was a long discussion before this flight on how long we were going to fly this very nicely and smoothly, and this actually was not expected. The fact that we got the lift was very good news. held that part back for a little while. But you know, that's an example, you know, where we started in the beginning and say, okay, let's do a 1/3 scale vehicle flight. And we were literally arguing about, oh yeah, this is remote control. This vehicle was remote controlled by a human outside. And saying, well, how long should we fly it? Well, you know, 20 seconds. No, we wanted 30 seconds. And no, it's gonna get too hot. Little do we know, like, it was just, you know, just lifting, and basically the closed loop control just wasn't fast enough from a human from the outside, and we just couldn't control it. And what was needed was a much faster onboard closed-loop control. But when this came out, I remember as the lead going, all right, this is, how do we report this to management? And so, you know, I have to be very careful. And the first thing is, we have good news. We generated lift at the exactly predicted RPM. I believe it was 6,000. It was 6,000 RPM. So we got lift, so our models are good. When we say we can lift at Mars, we can. Second, not so good news, the video you're about to see, you'll see lift, but you don't see sufficient closed-loop control. So anyway, that was an example of where, by not panicking and not resulting in a chaotic response, right? And saying, okay, here's a technical bump in the road, or a big pit in the road, maybe, as my daughter might say once in a while. Then you just think technically, okay, what's the next step? And sure enough, the program our management was understanding and say, all right, here's the next level of funding, and now show us control flight of a helicopter on Mars, carefully worded requirement, and we did that. So, yeah, it's. But, you know, there are many of those moments. I think a lot of things look easy when you look back, right? But I was thinking back to individual level and team level challenges. Back in the Block 5 receiver days, I remember I was working on signal processing simulations. And it was late one night. You know, I was on lab. Back then, we didn't have, you know, laptops and virtual working. I mean, you worked in your office, and I remember it was like 2 in the morning, like working, and my brain went to, oh my gosh, like, did I do a radian versus degree error in one place? And the panic that shot through my head, like, I mean, I really, like, probably had a mini stroke, you know, like, you'll never forget those moments, you know, right? And that's where you have to calm down, and you have to retrace all the algorithms back to the beginning and say, okay, no, we're okay, great, you know, we go on. But I remember that. And then these things happen even at the team level. The Mars helicopter, back to that example, when we built the helicopter, we built it, but we didn't just fly it right away. You know, we incrementally tested all the assumptions on lift and torque cancellation, and always had the helicopter held onto a test stand. And then time came, the first time when we had to now say, okay, let's take the test stand, but hang the helicopter, running counter-rotating, you know, running the blades counter-rotating, but hanging freely, and because of the torque cancellation, it should be stable. Time came for that, and that was going to be the first time the helicopter was going to be spinning full speed hanging. And if any predictions were wrong, you know the helicopter would self-destruct. You know? The team couldn't agree when time came to spin up. There was it was so scary. And we had no time, by the way. If we had failed it, we didn't have time to rebuild. We were going to miss the ride to get onto the rover, so the tension was high. And in fact, one of the key team members just walked out saying, no, we're not ready. We cannot do it. And we're like, what do we do next? And I remember giving a little more time. We came back again and still couldn't agree. And so at one point, it was time, really, I remember standing up and going, okay, then you're this discipline. If you have 2 more weeks, what would you do? No more simulation. Okay, simulations, there's no more. Mechanical, no more. There is no, and surveying around, and then we all, realized we couldn't agree on doing it, but it was time to move on. And that was one of those moments where, as a lead, I just realized, okay, I've taken understanding of all the reservations as well as reasons for readiness to go on to move on to the next step. And we had it was time to move on. And so I do remember that moment where I said, okay, I understand everything now. I'm ready to answer if this thing does, get destroyed because of a prediction error, then I'm ready to explain to Congress, president in the elevator, whoever. I just felt like I was ready. And so it was one of those moments where it comes from the gut that, I guess, a form of courage that you just have to muster up to move on. And so I told the team, we're ready. I know the reservations. I'm ready, and I'm ready to stand behind any problems going forward. Good news, of course, the helicopter acted beautifully, and there was no error in prediction. But those moments you'll never forget.
And I love this story because MiMi's whole story is a story of courage, right? Coming here at 16 by herself. I mean, just going into her senior year immediately and having to figure out the college application process without having really much of any support whatsoever on this. And then every kind of bold move and step that she's taken has just been a step in courage from my perspective. Courage, grit, determination, right? Perseverance. And I read an article once that said, you can't tell someone to be courageous, but you can tell someone to get comfortable with your discomfort and act. Don't let it hold you back. In that moment, you've got the entire team, you've got senior people who are disagreeing with you about whether to move forward or not. Not only, you just don't have perfect information, you never have perfect information, right? But you had to make the call. That is when true leadership, so not only kind of technical skills and deep understanding of the problem, but then the courage and the leadership to make the hard call when the time happens, right? So to me, that is just a remarkable part of your story and of who you are. But I also know that you were instrumental in convincing along parts of this journey to infuse technology to improve existing systems. And when something's kind of good enough, kind of hard to get the parties lined up to say, no, we're going to take it to the next level. So talk us through moments of that challenge for you.
Yeah, it's just a time for reflection. Yeah. I think a lot of us, have worked on bringing in new capabilities, new technology, and insert them. So the helicopter is definitely an example. Another example would be, for example, landing on Mars, entry, descent, and landing. There is a camera-based approach, the terrain relative navigation to insert a last step, to take an image in the last stage and based on that image, last minute, decide which way to divert, inserting technologies like that, right? Or to do multiple spacecraft formation flying. I mean, when those ideas first come up, they're really good ideas, but it's hard to fold them in because the questions come up about, well, we're doing well, why, what is the risk? Let's be very careful because we have a system that's working. But yes, of course, we want to get better, right? And so, those technologies, it takes really programmatic, technical, personal push of teams, to infuse, right? To really make the case, to bring back data, bring back results, win trust, to get support. And it takes a village, to infuse these new capabilities into missions, especially, when they're working well enough. But on the other hand, I absolutely believe that we have to push that infusion to keep moving forward so that we keep moving our capabilities forward. Yeah. Not an easy job, but must do.
No, not an easy job, and you've got political elements involved, and things could get canceled at any moment, and making sure that everything continues to move forward. So let's talk about your approach to risk, right, and decision making. You have described critical moments in your professional career where you advocated for what seemed like high-risk courses of action, but also you took personal risks, right? And one example that I wanted you to talk through a little bit was, when you decided to leave a deputy division manager job and took, I believe, kind of a demotion, right, to go 100% on the Mars helicopter, which was never a sure thing, right? And in you, what was it in you that caused you to want to go do that? And how was your decision-making process to take on that risk?
Sure, yes. So, yeah, at the time, it just happened. Now, looking back, it was a pretty risky move. I was a deputy manager of a division that has autonomous systems, spacecraft guidance and control, avionics, power, robotics, yes, organization of 800 people, a manager and deputy, and it's a very, a place where, you can make a lot of things happen. And Mars helicopter was one of the technologies that came out of the division, from the robotics division. In fact, Bob Bellmer, my chief engineer from the robotics area, was the lead there. So because it was in the division, it was given to me as additional duty to lead the team to see how far the technology would go. Because at the time, it was like, is it really possible? The question was hard. So I took on as additional duty. My deputy division manager position was held for a while. And in the meantime, the Mars helicopter started to take off, some of the journey that you're talking about. And I found myself a part of a team I felt needed, wanted, and I had a role, and I could see the mission of what this could do, right? And so all of a sudden, I had a team that was integrated with, and then I had peers that I had to continue to work with at the division level to get support. I was working with the director of JPL, Dr. Alachi at the time, was supporting it. He was connected to our team. And then we were also, communicating with the NASA headquarters. So staying in this position, I realized I am really needed. So I remember talking to Mike Searcher, who was the division manager at the time, to say, Mike, I think you have to just let me go. It's okay. It is very risky. As soon as the next experiment doesn't work, I will not have a job because Mars helicopter will be canceled. But it just isn't fair to the team, to the Mars helicopter team, or to the division manager. And so it just became full-time from a very stable job, one of the nicely positioned job at JPL, to one of the most uncertain jobs on the entire lab. And I remember my peers asking me, what are you doing? And in hindsight, it was a high risk, but I think my whole life, career in the professional sense, I've always followed missions. Yeah. It is about, once I believe in a mission that needs to be done, that's that third circle in the Venn diagram that I showed, I just believe in giving 100%, and that's what I was doing. So kudos to my family, actually, that supported me. It must look pretty crazy to my husband in hindsight, but anyway, he supported me, and I never knew, I had no idea the Mars helicopter was going to be this successful, So I think at the moment it was about, this is needed, and I need to be there.
And what point did you know it was going to be successful, when it actually flew on Mars?
Yes. and the Mars helicopter team, we wanted it so badly that none of us allowed each other to celebrate. In fact, I don't know, Teddy Zanetos, who's now leading the Mars sample return, he especially would say, no, like even if I want to celebrate, no, we're not celebrating. And so it wasn't until the first flight, I know the head of, the lead of the flight dynamics team, Harvard, to also, when something looks good to me in the chamber, right, I was always afraid to even smile, I had to check out his, did the analysis come through? So no, we wanted it so badly, we never celebrated until that night. So that's why that was my favorite flight. It wasn't the fanciest flight, but it's my favorite flight.
And on that Venn diagram, it's funny, the things that needed to be done, to me, we debated this when we sat down and first talked about this presentation, and I said, shouldn't that be things that are borderline impossible to do? Because that's really what drives you to a large extent, is that deep need, that deep desire to sort of get involved and make real something that is, borderline impossible, and be all in the process, right? So speaking of your family, and you know, the programs that you've managed have been like all-consuming, for sure. And how have you created harmony, you know, outside of the lab in your personal life, in all aspects of your personal life?
Yeah, you know, I have to be honest. It's not easy, you know, when you go after these things. And when I said that word, like hard work on top, you know, in the right side of the Venn diagram just now, there is no other way to say it. I mean, it's one of those that is really hard work. I remember my son, pretty young at the time, came up to me and just from his heart, he wasn't trying to insult anything. He says, you know, Mom says, you know, we're alive only because of Dad. You know that, right? And, you know, I'll never forget that moment, right? Or it was just, yeah, it takes a toll, and I think it takes a village. It really takes, you know, your family support, the friend support. You have to prioritize. And earlier at the lunch, one of the students asked me, what do you do for fun? And it was really embarrassing. My answer was, well, I work a lot. I really work a lot. And then second thing, I have my family and my work, and then I'm working very hard to also make sure that, you know, I keep up friendships. So, yeah.
But I am very certain that your son and daughter are super proud of you and brag about you whenever they get a chance. Absolutely. So I personally had a bird's eye view to your decision to go into private industry. So MiMi and I had the opportunity to attend this event that actually Joyce, sitting in the audience here, also goes to, called the Mars event, which is an event that Jeff Bezos runs every year. And we sit down and we talk tech of all things, machine learning and automation and robotics and space and health tech and all of these kind of things. And so I think that is probably how you got somewhat introduced to Amazon and Amazon's culture. It's really a Jeff Bezos event, but there is a fair amount of Amazon folks there. And so I know that your decision to, after 30 years at JPL, after all you had done and how you had established yourself there, your decision to walk away from that, I mean, talk about another courageous, bold move, to go into industry was a difficult one. I got to witness that firsthand, and
yes.
So talk us through how you made that decision and how that worked out. What inspired you to take that on?
So like you said, the Mars event, at that point I'd been at JPL for 25 years, and attending, like, I have to say, it was a bit shocking. It opened my eyes, because I had walked into one place, you know, in 1990, and wherever I go, I just work on project, and I love to make things happen. And I looked up at this event and saw this really neat, you know, like state-of-the-art, like forward-looking things that people were pursuing, like in technology. And I remember coming home and telling my families, like, wow, there are really big things happening out there. And my husband said, what are you talking about? Like, you know, we're here at JPL, you know, and we've been here a long time, and this is our life. And I said, okay, you know, we kept thinking, but I went back over the years and really got to see these leaders and, you know, the Amazon leaders, like how forward-thinking they are, and I was really impressed. So it was a little bit disturbing, because I was in a track that I was totally comfortable in, and now the question is starting to nag me, like, should I explore, you know, the world out there? This is like, you know, there is something I can give, and through these conversations and talking to these leaders in this is a very casual conference where you can talk, you know, the technical stuff, and it was like, I was like a fish in water. I felt so comfortable, and I'm like, wow, I have other places I belong to. I just thought I was just this one person, and, you know, I was a 23-year-old that walked into JPL, and I just thought that was my world. So that was always nagging me. Yeah. And then along came Project Kuiper. I heard, once I found out that Amazon was pursuing Project Kuiper, and really, because, again, I'm very mission-driven, right? Once I heard, and it always made sense to me from even when I was young, about extending, you know, services, connectivity on Earth using satellites in low Earth orbits. That's just something, as a young kid, you're like, why don't we do that, right? And way back in the 90s, I was told, oh, young kid, that's too expensive. We don't, right? I remember hearing like the older generation telling me. But now time has come where we can like put constellations in low Earth orbit to do that. So once I heard that Amazon was doing it, and having seen the leaders in like a natural, a conversation, seeing how forward-looking they were, I reached out. I reached out and said, well, what, given my experience, I really wanted to help make that happen on Earth on a global scale. So. And it was unnerving. And Amy, we had become friends over the Mars event. This has been now over a few years now. And I remember reaching out to you and say, Amy, how do I write a CV that is readable by, folks that are not NASA, only NASA and JPL? And Amy helped me. Like, she's like, oh, you have all this jargon, you've done this. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I was just doing my job. She's like, no, you've done this. And, it's friendships like that and also technical professional support, right? I mean, you don't do anything all by yourself. Like, even that transition, all the experience I've gained that I didn't realize, it took an event like Mars for me to realize, oh, I have something to offer. And then something like wanting to join a Project Kuiper like that, it took, folks like yourself to really help and transition. So it's been an amazing transition.
So I had the chance at the last Mars event to walk up to her, the senior vice president that she reports into, and I said, so how's MiMi doing? He said, she is crushing it. Yep,
I wasn't
there.
Surprised. I wasn't there when Amy. Thanks,
Okay,
Amy.
I haven't done a good job. We only have 2 minutes left here. Trying to figure out for the audience questions which one is different. I guess one of the things for my 10-year-old daughter watching with me, we loved your Venn diagram. Do you have any other advice for young scientists and mathematicians? But I would broaden that actually, given the variety of folks in this room. What advice do you have for people, early in their, very young people early in their college career, and people kind of more advanced in their careers? How do you think about that?
Yeah, my advice is, as you're taking classes or you're doing internships or you're helping someone, it doesn't matter, somewhere, once in a while you get a message, like something you resonate with, something, a way a professor speaks or a way a project speaks to you or something. And, and you'll know what I'm talking about, like wow, that is amazing, right? And when you really kind of map it to I believe I can do it, and even if I can't do it right now, I can catch up enough, I want to do it, right? You'll get that feeling, and when you get the signal, I think you really need to pursue it, listen to that message. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you really want to do something, you should believe you can do it. Some people will say, I've heard somebody actually talk to me and says, I want to go into engineering, but I really don't like math. I think I'm in trouble. I'm like, no, really. Engineering has mechanical engineering is different, very different from controls engineering to materials engineering. Folks like me, I love to do simulations to start with. Everything I work on, I want to know what the basic elements are built on. But that's not how some engineers like to prototype and amplify. So I guess what I want to say is don't ever think, if you really, really, really want to do it, I'm not talking about superficial stuff like, hey, I want to be rich, so I want to do it. Nothing like that. You know what I mean? It's more like, hey, I really want to make this happen for this reason. And you will know it because it comes from deep down in your heart. You should really pursue with confidence. So I wish I was told earlier that, to be given confidence. I think for me, I just had so many changes, so many moves. It was all about surviving, all of my life. And then, it took me until I was in my 40s and, to start to realize, oh, I think I can do it. So don't take as long as it took me. If I really, and I'm not making it up, you really, really can do it if you really want to. So that would be what I would share. Yeah.
Excellent. I think that's all we have time for, but amazing.
Thank you.
I would like to thank MiMi and Amy for that inspiring discussion. And thanks to you, the audience, for being with us today and for your excellent questions. I hope to see you again soon at Radcliffe. Have a wonderful evening.